What's up, guys? It's Tony here. Welcome back to Man Cave Studios. Today, I am going to be talking about professional sports in North America in this edition of Tony Talks. I'm going to talk about some things that these leagues do well, some things I think they could improve on. We'll cover everything today. So let's start with the MLS, since that's the first thing that you're seeing. Most of what I talk about MLS will be over some hockey stuff because I don't have a lot of B-roll, but let's just go with it. So I used to be a Philadelphia Union season ticket holder along with my dad. We used to go to all of the games, all the home ones anyway. I used to intern for them as well. And the MLS growing up was a league that was still in the process of developing, and it was amazing to see it develop. The first year that I really became an MLS fan was when Atlanta United and Minnesota got into the league. That was 2017. And they kept on expanding from there. And it was a fun time going to these games. Where I think MLS started to go downhill was with the Apple TV deal. They took it completely off cable. And that sucked. I hated that. Because every other major sports league in the United States still has a lot on cable. You know, regional sports networks, national television, there's a lot that you can still watch on cable, and I think that the MLS jumped the gun a little bit with the Apple TV deal because it's still about 50-50. So to take yourself completely out of the cable market, I really did not like that, and I don't like Apple. I don't buy anything Apple. Not a fan at all. So I stopped watching the MLS once this deal went through because I just can't get a subscription to Apple TV. Simple as that. And it's just unfortunate that this is the case. Now, when I talk about hockey, that I think is the best TV deal. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But the MLS is just a league that I think jumped the gun a little bit with transitioning completely to streaming, and now it's impossible to watch. And I think that the quality of play is also something that has always been a concern because it's the one league that you can point at in the United States and say, if you win that, you're not a world champion. You're not the best in the world, because there are obviously much better players and teams in Europe and South America even. But what the MLS has always done well is it's always been very competitively balanced. Until this past year, you never knew who was going to win. You never knew who was going to win MLS Cup. 2 years ago, Columbus Crew won it. 3 years ago, the Philadelphia Union were in the final, and they weren't a highly funded team. It's always been entertaining to watch the MLS. The problem is just that if you don't have Apple TV, you really can't watch MLS anymore, and that's very unfortunate. So I hope that the MLS in their next TV deal has some portion of their games back on cable, if not with regional sports networks, then at least not on freaking Apple TV. I just cannot buy an Apple product. Moving on, let's talk about hockey, because that's what's actually playing on the screen now. Now, the NHL, I think, has the best TV deal of any pro sports league in North America. The NHL, you can watch any game at any time, unless it's on national TV and you don't have a cable subscription. But if you do have a cable subscription, you can still watch your local team. So, for example, I'm a Flyers fan, so you can watch the Flyers on NBC Sports Philadelphia. But if you're a fan of an out-of-market team, you can get a subscription to ESPN Plus and have access to that and a billion other different things. I think what drives me crazy and what drives a lot of NHL fans crazy are the blackout restrictions. If you're going to have this deal with ESPN Plus, I just don't understand not putting the local teams on there. And also being in the Philadelphia market, for whatever reason, New York and New Jersey teams are blacked out in this region. You can't watch the Devils, the Rangers, or the Islanders without a cable subscription. It just doesn't make any sense because I don't live anywhere near those areas. But I think just in general, the blackout rules, they need to go. The blackout rules are ridiculous. If I want to watch the Flyers, I should be able to watch them on ESPN Plus if you're doing this right. And if you have cable, that's great. You can watch on NBC Sports Philadelphia still. I don't understand why that's not the case still. And then the NHL also has a lot of games on national television between TNT and ESPN. I don't like ESPN's coverage of the NHL, to be quite honest with you. I think that the talent could be better in terms of, like announcers and stuff. That's what I mean by talent. And I'm going to leave it at that. But I think that the NHL has the best TV deal of any sports league in North America. The quality of play is also pretty good in the regular season. The problem is it becomes all about fighting and, scrums after every whistle and just being physical in the postseason. And honestly, I don't care about watching UFC. Okay? I don't watch UFC. I don't want to see it. I like watching hockey for the scoring, for the great goalkeeping. I don't care for the fights at all. And when you have teams nowadays that all they do is they try to injure their opponent, they try to take them out, they try to wear them down, it just doesn't make for good quality hockey. And it feels like the Stanley Cup champion the last few years has not won it authentically. Maybe Vegas did, maybe Colorado did, but I feel like a lot of the teams who have won have done it based off of just beating up their opponents. And it's just not good hockey at the end of the day. It's not what the sport really is. I mean, my argument is always like, imagine if Connor McDavid got slashed and it broke a bone or something, and Connor McDavid had to sit out the Stanley Cup final. Does that make it any better? Is it better now that one of the league's stars is out because they got injured off of a stupid play, off of somebody slashing them? Or if somebody gets laid out on the ice who's just another big name player like Nathan McKinnon or Nikita Kucherov, if they wind up injured based off something stupid, then you've created a league where the sport is secondary, where the actual name of the game that you're trying to play is secondary. And that's not fun to watch. On top of that, I think many NHL fans would agree that the salary cap rules are ridiculous, and it sucks that they're going to stick around because the Canadian teams are automatically at a disadvantage, which is why they haven't won a cup in over 30 years. Any of the 7 Canadian teams. It's really hard to assemble a team when different states have different tax laws. And so, yeah, that's why the Eastern Conference champions the past 6 years have all come out of Florida, which is a no income tax state. That's ridiculous. I hate that. Anytime a team is placed at a disadvantage because of their state's laws, that's just ridiculous. I am not the biggest fan of a luxury tax system, but I am not a fan of a hard salary cap either. Now let's move on and talk about baseball, where there is a luxury tax system. The problem with baseball is that the luxury tax is not enough, and now apparently teams can defer payments to players until late in the future, and that's absolutely ridiculous. So the Los Angeles Dodgers have won the last 2 World Series, and now we have to sit here, and if you're going to watch the MLB this season, you have to pretend like you don't know that in November the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to win it again because they got the two biggest name free agents that were out there. And at the same time, you've got teams that will not spend over $100 million in one season, while others are spending 4 times that, if not more. It's not fun to watch at the end of the day when you know your team doesn't have a chance. And this is the only sports league in America and Canada where the small market teams have not won a championship in over a decade. The NHL, Florida Panthers, they won the Stanley Cup the last 2 years. The MLS, like I said, Columbus Crew, there's your one. NBA, the Oklahoma City Thunder just played the Indiana Pacers in the final. And in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs were a dynasty. Won their first Super Bowl with like the 30th ranked payroll in the league against a team that had the number 1 ranked payroll in the league. Pretty crazy to think about. But in the MLB, you just know that if you're a small market team, you don't have a chance. And the last small market team that I can remember that even made it to the World Series were the Tampa Bay Rays, and that was 5 seasons ago at this point. So it's just not fun. It's not fun to watch. It's very predictable. And on top of all of that, I think 162 games is a lot. That is way too much. And the playoff format, I might be alone in thinking this, but I think the playoff format is also really ridiculous because you play 162 games, and then you're looking at the Detroit Tigers right now, who absolutely blew their division lead in the span of 2 months. And down the stretch in the regular season, which was about 60 games, the Cleveland Guardians and Detroit Tigers were going back and forth for the American League Central. And it was a great fight, and there was history on the line, and Cleveland made history. And then they played each other in a 3-game series in the playoffs, and Detroit wound up winning that series. I hate that. That is the thing that I hate the most. I like the old MLB playoff format where it's just the top 4 get in. And, I understand what you want is more entertainment in the postseason, I guess, but you're not really crowning a champion. Like, I hate to say it, but the years that the Phillies and the Diamondbacks made it to the World Series, you weren't crowning the best team if either of them had won. I mean, the Texas Rangers, they were the 5th seed in the American League when they won the World Series. I like the idea of the top 4 making it because that means a division winner actually gets something. And then your 4th team is the best team that didn't win their division. The old format from the mid-2000s, that was the ultimate format. I like that. And I also like watching November baseball. I think that's what baseball is really made for. But the MLB tries to force too many postseason games in way too quick, and you get a worse quality of postseason. I do like the best of 7 series. I think that the best of 5 is okay for the division series, but I just do not like the wild card round. I don't like it at all because it's giving teams that don't deserve a playoff opportunity the chance to be in the playoffs. You need to be a consistently good team to be able to make the playoffs in a hypothetical world where the 2 last wild card positions don't make it. Because now you have teams that aren't cracking 90 wins get to the postseason. And it's like, why? What's the point? But that's my beef with the MLB. I hope that the next negotiations between the players and the team owners, which is going to happen this offseason, yield some results that change the luxury tax rules, the form of paying players. Maybe they add some sort of salary cap. I doubt they change the postseason format again unless they add more teams, which makes it even worse. But either way, that's my beef with the MLB. Now let's talk about the NBA. The NBA is a league that I had to stop watching because it was very boring. This was several years ago. I couldn't stand watching the Golden State Warriors make it to the final every year and play the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you had to pretend that your team still had a chance that somebody other than the Warriors and Cavs might wind up in the NBA Finals. And it was just very boring. It was very boring to watch. Recently, however, it's been a lot more entertaining, where you had the Indiana Pacers and the Dallas Mavericks go on these long runs. You had the Oklahoma City Thunder win their first NBA championship. You had the Denver Nuggets win it a few years ago. You had the Miami Heat as the 8th seed make it to the final. it's been a lot more entertaining as of late than it used to be when it was the same team, the same two teams making it to the final every year. That was very boring. The NBA, I think, needs to relax a little bit on the foul calls. I think that slows the game down. That makes it more boring. I think that there is still a fair amount of, foul calling that they do that I understand. But at the same time, there's a lot that needs to be cleaned up. And just to improve the flow of the game. And I think if they do that, it'll be a lot more entertaining to watch. I had beef with the amount of three-pointers that get shot in a game, but I know that's not going to change. But I think that there is something to be said about playing in the post. I don't think anything is going to really change in terms of three-pointers. Steph Curry kind of made the game a lot about that, and that's unfortunate. But that's basically the NBA. And yeah, I don't think that part will change. But I do hope that less gets called for fouls because fouls slow the game down. And the refs are now more inclined to call fouls even when there isn't one than they used to be. And that's really unfortunate. Let's move on to the NFL, the last one. I think the NFL's only real issue is their own television contracts. They put every game on national television. I don't have a problem with that. I think there's a fair amount that needs to be on streaming as well, but not like the way that they've been doing it, where they just pull a game off cable and say you can only watch it on Peacock, because that is ridiculous when RSNs don't carry NFL games to make somebody pay for a subscription to Peacock or Apple TV or whatever, Amazon Prime, to watch their team play once in a season. I really don't like that. I think the other issue, read between the lines here, but the officiating has gotten worse, and I think there's a reason for that. And sports betting companies have taken over a lot of the sponsorships. And I think those two are related. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. But I think that there's some foul play going on there. I think the quality has gotten better the last few years. Before that, it was kind of obvious who was going to be in the Super Bowl. This year, it's very much up in the air. I think the Chiefs dynasty really upset a lot of people because it was almost like, oh, great, we went from the Patriots dynasty to the Chiefs dynasty. It's been the same two teams in the AFC Championship game for like the last, decade and a half, which makes it really boring to watch. But I think this year has been a little bit different in terms of competitive balance. I think it's anybody's game at this point, who might win next year. And I think there is an appropriate amount of games in the season with 17, and the offseason is the right length of time as well. I know football fans think that maybe they should add 2 more games or whatever, but I feel like you bump the Super Bowl back enough and it's going to be in March, and I don't like that. March is spring training, March is baseball, and I feel like the Super Bowl is kind of your indication that winter is almost over. Daytona 500 usually happens the following week, and that's kind of your indication that the spring is like right around the corner. And so there's been talk about extending the season. I'm personally not a fan of that. I do think that the postseason has the right amount of teams because the NFL is one of those leagues where there aren't many games. And so if you don't have your starting quarterback for one of those games, that could make the difference. The difference between this and the MLB is the amount of games they play. That's the reason I don't like having 6 teams in the MLB and I do in the NFL, because the teams are just so close in the standings at the end of the regular season. I like that the first seed in each conference gets the bye, but nobody else in the conference does, because that puts a lot more emphasis on being the best regular season team in your conference. Whereas before, the first two got it, and the lower seed would, go to the number 1 seed, and the higher seed would go to the number 2 seed for the divisional matchup. And I thought that was kind of iffy because sometimes that higher seed was a division winner that went 8-9 and kind of got lucky facing a team that was, dealing with injuries. Like I'm thinking about the Panthers and the Cardinals that was probably about a decade ago at this point. But I do feel like there needs to be more of a streaming component that's cheaper than NFL Plus, which is ridiculous in terms of cost. And yeah, that's about the extent of it. And I think that all the sports betting stuff needs to go. But that's my opinion off of all of these leagues. Sports betting is kind of ruining sports in general. And there are two ways that this goes. One way is it gets outlawed and people stop watching because they can't watch sports without betting on it anymore. The other way, the more likely way that things will go, is that it'll just continue to leave its mark on sports. And that's very unfortunate because now you have people who will only watch sports to bet on them. The leagues are getting that revenue from money that's bet. What do you think is going to happen? Sports are a business. And so they're trying to make as much money as possible. The teams, the leagues themselves, the players, they're just trying to make money. And sports betting and dipping into that is a great way to do it, as long as you don't get caught. Anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know what you agree and disagree with in the comments. And until next time, peace out, broskies.